Aisha Rahman thought she had found love with Faizal Amir, but within 24 hours of their wedding, the man she trusted turned into her worst nightmare, revealing a darkness no one could have imagined. The city of Kuala Lumpur buzzed with excitement as Aisha Rahman prepared for what was meant to be the happiest day of her life. The streets were alive with vibrant decorations. Bright marigolds hung from every corner, and the air carried the soft scent of jasmine and incense. Aisha's family moved around her with practiced efficiency, ensuring every detail of the wedding was perfect. Her white dress shimmered under the sunlight, embroidered with delicate patterns that caught the eyes of everyone who passed by. Friends and relatives whispered about how beautiful she looked, and even strangers turned to admire the scene. Faizal Amir, her groom, arrived looking polished and confident, his carefully tailored attire projecting charm and authority. His smile was radiant, and he greeted guests warmly, earning nods of approval from elders and whispers of admiration from younger relatives. From the outside, it was a perfect celebration, the kind that would be remembered for generations. Yet beneath the surface, subtle tensions lingered. Faizal's family moved with an unusual protectiveness, guiding Aisha gently but insistently through rituals, their expressions a mix of pride and something harder to read. Aisha noticed these small oddities but brushed them aside, focusing on the joy of the day, the laughter, the music, the flickering candlelight in the evening halls. She felt a thrill of anticipation as the ceremonial rituals unfolded, unaware that within a few hours, the world she had imagined would unravel completely. Every smile, every blessing, every meticulous arrangement masked shadows that were only beginning to emerge. The perfect wedding, celebrated in broad daylight under clear skies, hid a darkness waiting just beyond the walls, a darkness that would descend upon her life in ways she could never have imagined. The city's celebration and her family's joy were the last moments of innocence before the nightmare began. Aisha had always admired Faizal's confidence and ambition, the way he carried himself with ease among friends, family, and colleagues. He seemed to have the perfect balance of charm and authority, someone who could protect and provide, someone every young woman might dream of marrying. For months, she had believed she had found her ideal partner, a man whose vision of life aligned seamlessly with her own. Yet, as the day unfolded, small inconsistencies began to gnaw at her. Faizal's reactions to certain questions were overly calculated, his smiles sometimes fleeting, as if hiding thoughts he didn't want her, or anyone else, to see. Aisha noticed how he guarded his phone, how he subtly redirected conversations, and how he sometimes stared at her with a measuring gaze, almost as if trying to confirm something she could not yet name. Rumors from distant relatives resurfaced in her mind, fleeting stories she had dismissed as exaggeration, tales of strange behavior toward previous acquaintances, unexplained disappearances, and odd patterns of secrecy. They had seemed irrelevant then, mere gossip, but now they carried a weight she could not ignore. Even Faizal's family, who appeared supportive and caring, sometimes acted in ways that felt constraining, insisting on private rituals and secluded conversations, often leaving Aisha waiting and uneasy. These moments, small and easily overlooked by outsiders, created an undercurrent of tension she could feel in the pit of her stomach. The bright laughter and celebratory music could not mask the subtle unease growing in her mind. She began to wonder if the person she thought she knew, the man she had chosen as a life partner, might hold secrets that went far deeper than she could imagine. The perfect exterior of the wedding day hid shadows of deception, and Aisha, blissfully unaware of the coming storm, was standing on the edge of a reality that would soon shatter everything she believed. The wedding night began with the promise of intimacy and celebration, a continuation of the joyous day that had left everyone smiling and admiring. Aisha, exhausted yet exhilarated, felt a mixture of nervous excitement and relief as the formalities finally concluded. The room glowed with soft candlelight, and the delicate scent of flowers filled the air, creating an atmosphere of warmth and serenity. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to imagine a future filled with love, trust, and shared dreams, convinced that the man beside her embodied the devotion she had longed for. Yet as the evening wore on, subtle shifts in Faizal's demeanor began to disturb the fragile calm. The confident charm he had displayed earlier gave way to a careful scrutiny, his eyes tracing her movements with an intensity that felt calculating rather than affectionate. Every gesture, every glance seemed measured, as if he were seeking something beyond the ordinary, something he had not expected to find. Aisha tried to dismiss the unease, attributing it to nerves and the pressure of the occasion, but the tension in the room was impossible to ignore. Even the soft music and the gentle flicker of candlelight could not mask the change in energy, the heavy air that pressed down on her chest. The warmth and joy of the day were replaced with an undercurrent of control and observation, leaving Aisha feeling exposed and uncertain. It was a stark reminder that the perfect exterior of the wedding could conceal truths too dangerous to confront directly. Within the walls of that decorated room, where vows had been spoken and promises made, the first signs of impending darkness were taking shape, signaling that the life she had envisioned was about to collide violently with reality. Just hours after the wedding, the fragile sense of security Aisha had clung to shattered completely. Faizal's carefully concealed temper erupted the moment he discovered a truth he had long feared. Aisha was not what he had expected. His reaction was immediate and violent, transforming the once celebratory home into a scene of terror. The air, moments before filled with laughter and music, became heavy with fear and tension, each room echoing with the sounds of aggression. Aisha tried to shield herself, but the sheer force of his anger left her bruised and disoriented. The lavish decorations, the carefully arranged flowers, and the smiling guests outside were all meaningless in that moment. The nightmare had taken over entirely. Her cries for help were muffled by the walls of the house, and neighbors, though they heard the commotion, hesitated to intervene, constrained by social norms and fear of retaliation. Every shadow in the room seemed to grow longer and darker, every movement of Faizal's hands more unpredictable and threatening. The realization that someone she had trusted completely could turn so quickly into a source of harm left Aisha paralyzed with shock and disbelief. Within those first hours of marriage, the life she had imagined, full of companionship, protection, and mutual respect, had been replaced by terror and pain. The house, once a symbol of new beginnings, had become a prison. She was trapped not only by the physical space, but also by the betrayal of someone who had promised love. In those long, agonizing hours, Aisha understood that her reality had shifted irrevocably, that survival required courage she had never needed before, and that the events of this single day would mark the beginning of a long, harrowing struggle she could not have anticipated. Despite the searing pain and fear that coursed through her body, Aisha found a flicker of determination she didn't know she possessed. The house that had been her wedding venue and supposed sanctuary now felt like a trap, each corner hiding threats, each shadow a warning. She moved carefully, feeling the bruises on her arms and the sting across her face, but refusing to let her fear paralyze her. The chaos of the night, the sound of doors slamming and footsteps echoing through the halls, gave her moments to act. Using a narrow window of opportunity, she slipped out of the house, her movements frantic but calculated. The suburban streets outside, normally serene in the early morning light, now felt like a maze of potential dangers, but also the only path to freedom. Every step was uncertain, the once familiar neighborhood transformed into a landscape of anxiety and tension. Aisha kept low, ducking behind parked cars and hedges, listening intently for any signs of pursuit. Her body ached, her clothes were torn, and the world seemed both too bright and too threatening at once. Despite everything, she refused to stop, knowing that hesitation could cost her life. Each breath was a mix of fear and determination, every movement a small victory against the overwhelming power that had tried to destroy her. The adrenaline coursing through her veins sharpened her senses, helping her notice details she might otherwise have missed: a slightly ajar gate, a quiet alley, a sympathetic shadow. By sheer will, she pushed forward, guided by the hope that help existed beyond the confines of that nightmare. For the first time that night, Aisha realized that survival depended not only on escaping physical danger, but on reclaiming control over her life, one cautious step at a time. Aisha stumbled through the quiet streets, her body trembling from exhaustion and pain, until she reached the small mosque at the edge of the neighborhood. The sunlight fell softly on the white walls, giving the place an almost serene glow that contrasted sharply with the chaos she had just escaped. Inside, the air was cool and calm, a stark relief from the heat and fear outside. An elderly woman, Maksik Salma, noticed her immediately. There was something in Aisha's hurried, disheveled appearance that spoke of urgency and desperation, a story that did not need words to be understood. Without hesitation, the woman guided her inside, offering a quiet corner where Aisha could sit and gather herself. The relief was overwhelming, but the fear lingered, a persistent shadow in her mind. As she rested, Maksik Salma observed carefully, understanding the dangers that had driven the young bride to seek refuge. The elderly woman had known Faizal Amir in his youth and had seen patterns of manipulation and cruelty before, though nothing on this scale. She sensed that Aisha's escape was just the first step in a longer, more dangerous journey. Quietly, she contacted trusted authorities and advocacy contacts, ensuring that the young woman would be protected without drawing unnecessary attention that could provoke retaliation. Aisha, still in shock, could barely comprehend the kindness extended to her, but the sense of safety allowed her to begin processing the events that had unfolded. Each story Maksik Salma shared, each cautious plan for next steps, reinforced a fragile sense of hope. For the first time since the violence began, Aisha felt the possibility of agency, a chance not just to survive, but to reclaim control over her life and to prepare for the long road of justice and healing that lay ahead. As the authorities began their investigation, the dark layers of Faizal Amir's life slowly came to light, revealing a pattern of deception and cruelty that shocked everyone who knew him. Neighbors and distant acquaintances were questioned, and the fragments of information they provided painted a disturbing picture. Faizal had a history of controlling women, each relationship marked by subtle emotional manipulation, secrecy, and, in some cases, unexplained disappearances. Friends who had once praised his charm now recounted moments of unease, instances where his behavior had bordered on obsession. Evidence collected from his personal devices further exposed the extent of his controlling nature. Messages and social media posts that hinted at premeditation and a desire to dominate those closest to him. Every revelation deepened the sense of betrayal that Aisha had already felt, confirming that the man she had trusted was far from the partner she imagined. Even his family, previously seen as protective and caring, seemed complicit in maintaining a carefully constructed facade. The investigation revealed meticulous planning, the orchestration of appearances, and a relentless pursuit of secrecy. Community members were stunned, realizing that the charming, successful young man they had admired could hide such darkness behind a mask of respectability. As forensic experts analyzed documents, photos, and communication records, it became clear that Aisha's ordeal was not an isolated incident, but part of a disturbing pattern. The police began connecting dots that linked Faizal to past relationships, each more sinister than the last, painting a portrait of a man who had mastered the art of manipulation and control. For Aisha, the revelations were both terrifying and validating. Terrifying because of the depth of deception she had endured, validating because the truth she had feared to acknowledge was finally being uncovered. The investigation marked the first real step toward. Just when it seemed that the case against Faizal Amir would follow a predictable path, shocking new revelations emerged that deepened the sense of betrayal and disbelief surrounding the story. Forensic analysis and investigative work uncovered evidence that Faizal had deliberately manipulated his own identity to maintain a veneer of respectability. He had assumed multiple identities over the years, falsifying documents and misrepresenting his background to authorities, community members, and even close family members. Religious leaders who had overseen the marriage rituals were shocked to learn that they had unknowingly validated someone who had carefully crafted his public persona to hide disturbing truths. Each discovery added another layer of complexity to the case, revealing that Aisha had not only been a victim of immediate physical violence, but also of long-term deception that had been meticulously orchestrated. Investigators found evidence suggesting that Faizal had researched the families of prospective brides, targeting women he believed would not easily reveal his secrets. The community began to realize that the man they thought they knew, the charming, ambitious Groom, was a master of manipulation, capable of bending people and circumstances to his will. Every text message, every altered record, and every false claim uncovered by the authorities painted a chilling picture of premeditation. For Aisha, the revelation that her entire perception of Faizal had been based on carefully constructed lies intensified both her fear and determination. It became clear that the nightmare she had experienced in the house was only the visible tip of a far deeper and more insidious reality. The uncovering of Faizal's hidden identities marked a turning point, transforming the case from a personal tragedy into a larger story of deception, manipulation, and the dangerous consequences of trusting appearances without question. News of Aisha Rahman's ordeal spread quickly, first through whispers in the neighborhood, then through social media and news outlets, igniting shock and outrage across Malaysia. The story of a bride beaten within 24 hours of her marriage captured public attention, not only for its brutality, but also for the betrayal and deception that had led to such violence. Online platforms erupted with discussions, debates, and messages of support for Aisha, while many demanded justice and accountability for Faizal Amir. Activists and advocacy groups used the case to highlight the vulnerabilities women face in situations of arranged marriages and domestic abuse, calling for stricter legal protections and more transparent marriage processes. The public outcry placed immense pressure on authorities to act swiftly and decisively, and the courts began receiving overwhelming attention as the case unfolded. Community members who had once admired Faizal began to question their assumptions and wonder how they had failed to see the warning signs. The intense media coverage revealed the layers of manipulation, the long history of controlling behavior, and the complex network of secrets Faizal had maintained. Meanwhile, Aisha, though still recovering physically and emotionally, became a symbol of courage and resilience. Her escape and willingness to share her story inspired countless women who had faced similar situations in silence, offering a sense of hope that justice could prevail. Despite the fear of retaliation and societal judgment, her case sparked a nationwide conversation about trust, deception, and women's safety within marriages. The events transformed her personal tragedy into a catalyst for awareness, compelling society to confront uncomfortable truths about domestic violence, identity fraud, and the dangerous consequences of blindly accepting appearances. In the public eye, Aisha's struggle became a story of both horror and empowerment. Eventually, Faizal Amir was arrested, and the full weight of the law began to bear down on him. The charges were severe, encompassing assault, fraud, and emotional manipulation, reflecting the depth of the crimes he had committed. Court proceedings revealed the meticulous planning behind his actions, the layers of deceit he had constructed, and the extensive control he had sought to exert over Aisha and others. Evidence from his multiple identities, falsified documents, and communications painted a chilling portrait of a man who had mastered manipulation and intimidation. The courtroom became a stage where the truth, long hidden behind Faizal's charming facade, was finally exposed to all. Aisha attended the hearings cautiously, still bearing physical and emotional scars, yet she felt a growing sense of empowerment as the truth came to light. Support from family, advocacy groups, and authorities reinforced the idea that she was not alone, that her suffering had not gone unnoticed, and that justice could be achieved. Over time, the legal system acted decisively, ensuring that Faizal faced consequences proportionate to his crimes. Beyond the courtroom, the community grappled with the lessons of the case, reflecting on how appearances can deceive and the importance of vigilance, support networks, and protections for vulnerable individuals. For Aisha, healing was a long, ongoing process. Each day offered small victories, the ability to walk without fear, to reclaim independence, and to rebuild trust in herself and others. The trauma of betrayal and violence remained, but it became a foundation for resilience rather than defeat. Her survival and determination transformed her story from one of horror into one of courage and hope, proving that even in the darkest circumstances, justice, recovery, and empowerment are possible. Aisha emerged not only as a survivor, but as a symbol of strength for others facing similar struggles.